The California Attorney General rejects the CCPA extension request. Boo. I'm Richard Chapo, privacy lawyer down in San Diego, California. And so, if you're not aware of what's going on, the CCPA, the California Consumer Privacy Act, has an enforcement action deadline is July 1st, 2020. That's when the California Attorney General can start sending out letters and enforcement actions can be pursued. So a number of ad groups, business groups, about 60, sent a joint letter to the AG's office saying, hey, given this societal disruption, please extend the July 1st, 2020 enforcement date to January 2nd, 2021, because companies are a mess at the moment, as we all know. Employees working from home, finances are not great. Obviously, we're in an unprecedented time. And the AG's office, being business friendly, said no. They said they're cognizant of the things going on in the world, but the July 1st, 2020 date stands. So this caused a lot of angst, but you can kind of see where the Attorney General is coming from. The CCPA has been in effect since January 1st, 2020. So companies should already be mostly in compliance. Now, you can't be in complete compliance, and in some areas you can't even start because we don't have final regulations yet. The regulations have gone through a number of drafts, and we're expecting them here sometime soon. But obviously, until we have the final version, nobody really knows exactly what is required. So full compliance is impossible. But being 70, 80, 90% compliant at this point is probably a realistic goal. And so the AG's office is probably thinking, well, if we tell them, that we're going to extend it to January 2nd, 2021, most of these companies are just going to set the project aside until November or December. So let's not do that. And so you can see that kind of a mentality. The other thing is a lot of people have been complaining, saying, well, California, the other agencies in California have extended their deadlines. And that's true until you look at the finer points of it. So yes, there have been extensions of things like the income tax deadline, sales tax payment deadlines, and what have you. But those have been extended to July. And obviously the enforcement date for the CCPA is already in July. So it's not that big of an extension, not like most people are thinking. And then finally, I'm not even sure the AG's office has the authority to extend the July 1st, 2020 deadline. It's easy for me to say. And the reason for that is that deadline is actually called out in the CCPA. It's in the code, the legal code. And so it is a set date. To extend it, arguably, the Attorney General would have to ask the California State Legislature to go ahead and pass a quick modification to the law that would extend that date. Now, if the AG just did it on its own, would anybody really complain? Sure, privacy advocates would, but I don't think anything would happen that would really keep the AG's office from doing that extension. But nonetheless, it is a technical issue worth consideration. So the end point of all of this, the ultimate result is the enforcement date is still July 1st, 2020. And that is the date when the CCPA or the Attorney General's office can start sending out enforcement action notices and what have you. So you need to be getting into compliance if you haven't already. And you need to be staying on top of this. And I realize that can be difficult given the current situation in society. If you own a company, your revenue is probably not looking great. And, the disruption to your employment force also a rather big problem. However, I think realistically what's going to happen is we'll have to see where society is on July 1st. So if things are still a mess, I don't think the Attorney General is going to start sending out enforcement letters right and left. They do have human beings that work there, contrary to popular opinion. And so I think that's probably what's going to happen. Even if things are going well, let's say the virus disappears at the end of May and what have you, the Attorney General had already said before the coronavirus mess that, as long as companies were making a good faith effort to comply, that it would look favorably upon that. And so, if you're doing that, then I think that, realistically, what kind of a threat do you face? Not a huge one. And private right of action under the CCPA is very limited, pretty much just to data breaches. Although we're seeing, some claims by some creative plaintiff attorneys to try to make unfair competition claims against companies who aren't in full compliance with the CCPA and things of that sort. We'll have to see how all that plays out. But those are against larger companies. So I wouldn't be too worried about those at the moment. Knock on wood. And the other thing about the July 1st, 2020 deadline is even if the California Attorney General wants to go, completely nuts with enforcement actions, it only has a budget of about $4.7 million. That may sound like, a good bit of money, but if they pursue a company like Facebook, who has taken some interesting positions on CCPA compliance, they could easily blow the full $4.7 million on that one case alone. And traditionally, what you will see is the AG's office try to pick out some big hitters, if you will, because it wants to get the most bang for its buck. So if it goes after John's Deli, in some random town in California, that's not really going to get a lot of publicity. But if it goes after Facebook and is able to settle the case or win the case, that they're going to get a lot of publicity out of that. And it's going to act as an example for a lot of other companies in relation to what actually has to happen from a compliance perspective and what does not. And so you tend to see those kinds of action. I can't promise it, but you would think that would be kind of where we're headed. The other interesting aspect of this is there is a ballot initiative in November that would amend the CCPA. So we'll have to see how that all plays out. And then following the presidential election in November, we are expecting, hoping, praying that we will get a national privacy law, perhaps in the first quarter of 2021, assuming the world hasn't gone full Mad Max at that point. And that would help us kind of create a universal law. So you would only have to comply with one law instead of a law from New York, a law from California, a law from Nevada, a law from Florida, and the current mess that we see. But we'll just have to see what the world looks like at that point. So anyways, stay safe, keep washing those hands, and enjoy watching Frozen for the 485th time. Have a good one.